You're watching Open Agenda. Here's our host, Joe White.
Thank you for joining us here at Open Agenda. I'm your host, Joe White. I'm joined with our executive producer, Joe Venosa. Thanks for coming out today.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
So in this episode, we're going to get a chance to sit down with the president of the county council, John Cannon. We're going to talk about the last county council meeting, but a lot's come out with our county executive just had a press conference. So we're going to have a follow-up episode to this episode, a second part, so to speak, where we're going to talk about all that. So I don't want anyone to think that we're going to miss out on that news, but I think that part of the news deserves its own time and place. So the county council just had a meeting on August 6th, and at that meeting, one of the things that they had to do was vote, in which they voted 6-1 to override the veto by the county executive. The veto she vetoed the legislation that they passed 2 weeks ago after public comments, after public hearings, that would have put that safeguard in check about the motorized vehicles, the approval.
Yes, sir.
So, I mean, what did you see? I mean, you were watching on PAC 14. So some of the council comments, particularly from Councilman James Wynn, about the need to do this. I mean, he's the one person who voted against it.
Yeah, it was a bit strange, I thought, because he made a comment that he felt it wasn't the role of the legislature to legislate. And, I have a dictionary, and you can look at history and how government works, and that is precisely the role, I would think. If there is a law or a policy that a legislative body wants to pass, they have every right to do so. And of course, the county executive in our current form of government vetoed it, and they had the votes to override that veto. So I think in terms of the philosophy behind it, I didn't really get the logic of it.
So, one of the things that came up, that has continued to come up out of the county executive's office is transparency. But the reason why this legislation was passed, again, after public hearing, after public input, was because there was no preemptive notice that this MOU with Livewire Media was going to allow them to host this event at Safari at the Quarry.
Correct. I mean, again, let's understand this, right? This legislation was created, voted on, and then overridden through the veto precisely because there was no oversight, public commentary, or transparency on that sort of situation with the Safari at the Quarry. So in a sense, what the council was doing was rectifying a real problem for county citizens and taxpayers, and it was through the legislative process. And clearly 6 out of 7 people could understand that, and so I think that's commendable that when you have this kind of government, it responds to those needs and concerns of citizens.
So, we're going to talk more in the second part of this special episode about the work session that Mike Lewis, our sheriff, was at the same August 6th meeting. But again, the purpose of that work session was because, again, another MOU was signed, no public comment, no public input.
Yep.
And again, today, the press conference that memorialized the fact that this was a mistake and she pulled that back.
And let's be clear, right? This was involving arguably the most important thing that anybody in the county deals with, which is public safety, right? So it's not as if we're talking about an obscure event, but now we're getting into an issue that is lacking transparency on the most important of issues.
Well, so it's in that same air, transparency. There are a couple other committee meetings that are coming up that I think are very important in order to promote and provide transparency. One is the Natural Resource Conservation Advisory Committee. They're having their meeting on August 13th at 2 p.m. It's in room 306, which is in the government building. It's not the county council room, but it's adjacent
To it. Yeah.
The proposed legislation that came from Josh Hastings about bamboo restrictions and that sort of thing, it sounds like through public input, through cooperation, they're narrowing down that so there's not such a broad piece of legislation. But that is where they would discuss it, correct?
Correct. And we've seen the sort of impetus of what was driving some of those concerns. So I think you're going to see it, much more solidified at that point, hopefully.
Yeah. So Planning and Zoning meets on August 15th at 1:30 in room 301, which is the county council meeting. I looked this morning. There's still no agenda posted for that. They at times can have some very important matters that come up through them. Sometimes there's nothing. Then that may be why there's no agenda. But again, I think folks should continue to watch the WacomicoCounty.org website. Go to the agendas tab, and you can look these up. They go by committee. On Wednesday, August 21st at 6 p.m. is the Agricultural Land Preservation Advisory Board. There is one thing on their agenda talking specifically about a piece of property. Again, I think anybody who would think that whether agricultural land preservation may impact them one way or another should keep an eye on that. But that meeting is on Wednesday, August 21st at 6 o'clock, and that's in room 301. So
Our favorite room.
yeah, a couple committees don't have meetings this month in August. One is the airport meeting. They're not having one. Their next one's in early September, and there's not one in the Parks and Rec. Their last one was in June. They don't meet again until the end of September. They kind of take a summer recess, and they're in that now. So, going to get a chance to sit down with President John Cannon and speak about current issues, the ballot initiative in November to vote for the Charter Amendment A, and then we want to take some time to review what Sheriff Mike Lewis spoke about at the open work session on Tuesday night and at the press conference that the county executive had on Thursday, August 8th. Joe, you have anything else?
I just think if anything, the last few days have shown us the importance of local government, why it matters, even if it doesn't sort of come across as the most dynamic thing sometimes. But you really get to see why local issues impact your life directly. I would like to say, from my own lens as a parent, as the father of an 8-year-old, this horrible tragedy that happened to the 2 children from East Salisbury. There were 2 separate tragedies that have affected some families.
Yeah, it was very sad.
It was incredibly sad and awful. And I'm not a praying man, but I do extend my deepest best wishes and thoughts to those families for what they're going through.
Yeah, our hearts are with those families. This community has the ability to come together to fight bad and also come together when something bad does happen. And we're thinking about you. When we do come back after this break, we get a chance to sit down with President of the County Council, John Cannon, and then later on we will discuss the open work session with the Sheriff Mike Lewis, as well as the press conference that the county executive had today, putting a pause on the MOU that she signed with Eastern Shore Undercover. We'll be right back after this. One of the more interesting festivals in Wacomico County is the Pemberton 24 Festival of 5Ks. It's held September 20th and 21st at the Historical Park in Pemberton. There are 24 different 5K runs going all through the day and night into the next day. You make a team and you build up points competing in some or all of the runs. And there's bonus points for completing runs overnight and also for completing all of the runs. So it's a team competition. To get more information and to register, you go to pemberton24.com. Thanks for joining us again here at Open Agenda. I'm here today with our guest, the president of the Wacomico County Council, Mr. John Cannon.
Pleasure to be here.
Thanks for coming out here.
Sure, thanks for having me.
So I wanted to ask you, what motivated you originally to get involved with the Wacomico County Council and run for elected office?
It was kind of interesting. There was a period of time where I thought I was going to do it, and I didn't do it. And then I watched how things developed, how it worked out, and I really I remember saying, I'm not going to pass that up again, and when the next 4 years comes. So that's when I decided to finally run. Some of it's people ask me, "Are you going to run? Why don't you run?" It would be a good fit. So peer pressure. Right?
Okay, so, in a good way.
So, and I will never forget that. And I was talking with Bill Reshill on the radio this morning about how he and I are both past JCs. And when I was in the JCs, when I was president of JCs, I had to go before the county council. We decided to ask for money for fireworks for the county. And it was the first time ever. And just being in that environment, I was pretty much in all of it. I thought it was a really unique experience. And I thought, well, maybe I could aspire to something that, to that level. And so when the opportunity came, I threw my hat in the ring.
So having as much experience as you do, what do you think are some of the challenges you see with the county in 2024 and in the near future?
Well, what I see right now, as far as the county's concerned, I think we have things in order. Sheriff's doing a great job with public safety. We know that he's got that locked in, and the costs are reasonable. Board of Education, we know we have the blueprint, but I don't think we have a few more years we have to worry about those costs. I think the main thing that my concern is the airport's also, we've made a lot of investments, so that's going really well. Okay. But my concerns mainly, I think, is probably going to come down to fire safety as far as our volunteer fire companies. We still have to finish working out, some type of financial arrangement with the city of Salisbury. We actually did fund, the volunteers were flat funded this year, and the county council moved things around to put about $825,000 into the volunteers. We felt we should not flat fund them, but we do recognize the fact that sooner or later we have to deal with trying to recruit new members, and retention is not really an issue. The big issue is that with the volunteers, they're sort of phasing out, and it's becoming much more difficult. So we have to figure out what type of incentives to create to bring in new cadets and things like that.
And so let's talk a little bit more about that. I want to make sure we're clear.
Sure.
The volunteer fire departments this year did not get flat funded. They were actually given more money than they were given in 2023 fiscal year, or 2024.
No, they were flat funded. There was no increase given. It was the same amount as the prior year.
Okay.
But the council can add to the budget, but we can make recommendations. So what the council did, we did numerous things. We instituted cuts in several other areas, some in corrections, so that we could then go back to the executive branch and say, hey, we're cutting this, which is our authority, and now we're going to recommend that $825,000 of that go to the volunteer fire company.
And did that happen?
It did happen,
Okay.
yes. But what we're really seeing is that I think with the city of Salisbury and with the county volunteers, we're being pulled in two different directions. I think eventually the county has to establish how and how we're going to establish an EMS unit around
within the county itself.
Maybe just outside the city limits of Salisbury, and that way we could take that workload off of the volunteers, put it to a paid EMS, and solve the problem for both the city of Salisbury and Wycomico County. Right now we're being asked to put millions of dollars into the city of Salisbury. I'd rather make those investments in Wycomico County and at the same time solve everybody's problem.
I think one of the having been at the meetings, one of the biggest pieces of miscommunication I've seen come out is there's a lot of folks who have said that you've cut the fire service agreement with the city of Salisbury by $400,000, but in fact it did go up $1.6 million this year.
Yeah, and that's the trickery we've seen before. I know last year we gave about I think $800,000 to the Board of Education. The original request over maintenance of effort. So the original request was like 1.3. And we had people come in and yell at the council because we cut the Board of Education $500,000. I don't think they had been told the correct information. We increased it. We actually increased maintenance effort, hardly ever done, but we only cut it back $500 from what was recommended. So they were complaining about the $500 cut, ignoring the fact we'd just given $8.
And then this year you went to $1 million, right?
This year we went from $1 million last year to 1.6 this year. So the emphasis to the public, unfortunately, through the administration was, oh yeah, the county council cut the Salisbury Fire Department by $400,000. Well, actually, we increased them by $600,000, which was a 60% increase on top of a 30% increase the year before.
I was a witness at your final budget hearing where you're actually approving this. I literally saw the county council go through line items and pick up extra little bit of money here, money there, and put it into that fire service. I mean, it was a lot of hard work, but it was open and out in the public, the work you were doing. I mean, every amendment had to be motioned, seconded. It was, now I wouldn't say tedious, it was important, but it wasn't from a lack of effort.
No, a lot. You can't imagine how much goes into it behind the scenes to make sure you can balance everything out, because we also had to restore the revenue cap. The executive had busted the revenue cap, which we've had in place ever since it was implemented 18 years ago. We've never done that. Whether or not you're allowed to or not for education, not the concern. The fact is we did not want to lose that benefit to the citizens of Wycomico County.
So what is the revenue cap?
Revenue caps are very, before I say that, I do want to say we are still working towards some type of compromise with the City of Salisbury Fire Department. They're not happy with the 1.6, so we're not done yet as far as talks with them.
Okay.
Okay.
So tell me more about the revenue cap.
Revenue cap is very interesting. I've always been a fan of the revenue cap. The revenue cap is actually relatively simple. The county, this county receives its revenue from two streams. One is from income tax receipts, and the other one is from property taxes. For the most part, the largest majority of revenue that we get. The restriction on Wycomico County is only on the property taxes. And what that does is it says there's a 2% cap on revenue that the county can receive from property taxes over the year before. So if last year we got a net of $1 million from property tax revenues, we could only get $1,020,000 this year.
So where does the extra money go? So let's say with the additional assessments, it was going to be 1.1 million.
Right.
What happens to the difference?
Well, that's the beauty of it, because assessments always go through the roof. The state of Maryland's never going to leave us alone, and they're increasing assessments 30%, 100% in some cases. That's a big number. So when that happens, the assessments for Wycomico County, the base goes through the roof. With the 2% revenue cap, the only way you can counterbalance that is lower the tax rate.
And it happened this year, right?
Yeah, it's happened most years.
Yeah.
So that's what we do, and that's the beauty of it. The county lowers the tax rate, the rate that's implemented. We lower that so that the property owners will have less per $100 worth of square foot. They'll be paying less. Now, in the long run, they could be paying more on their property taxes just because the assessment was so high. But the rate that Wycomico County, the burden of the rate Wycomico County is putting on them, we have reduced it. And more recently, in this last year, it was stated that the revenue cap was busted. They were given a new school, and their taxes were lowered. What wasn't said was that with the busting of the revenue cap, those taxes were not lowered as much as they could have been.
Yeah.
And that's what the council did. We shifted about $2 million around to restore the revenue cap. And to answer your question, that money goes into the pockets of the citizens of Wycomico County. They've said before, I've heard this so often, my God, if we didn't have a revenue cap, we'd have $17 more million. It's, something. I said, wait a minute, you know how I look at that? That's $17 more million we've put in the pockets of the taxpayers of Wycomico County.
Exactly.
And we learn to live within our means.
And we get to use that money to stimulate the economy right here.
Yeah, right. Isn't that odd?
So that's not the only way the budget can go up, because the budget has gone up. So
Sure.
There's another piece of this pie, or another big piece of this pie, and you mentioned it a minute ago. Is that from the income tax
Yeah,
part?
right, exactly.
So if our health and benefits for our county workers and the raises, I mean, you all approve those.
Sure.
That money has to come from somewhere, but there are other revenue streams that are adding to it that doesn't require us to bust a revenue cap, correct?
Exactly. And also, again, you live within your means.
Yes.
If you have to make cuts, you make particular cuts. I think we've done a lot of spending. We've also taken a lot more, in the last 2 years, we've taken a much more revenue from our reserves, but we still do have a rather high reserve, so I'm okay with that. That's part of what came in with Fruitland Primary School. The council, that was the debate back and forth in reference to that.
And that was a big win. I mean, congratulations on
Yeah,
getting
that
that
was
approved for the students out on that part of the town, or the county.
Right.
But as far as you mentioned it before, the potential to bust the revenue cap. I was in a lot of the budget meetings, the work sessions, and the council, in a very open forum, talked about how you could use all reserve funds, you could use all bonded funds. Obviously, interest rates are really high right now. You came to a resolution that was a compromise. Can you explain a little bit about how you came to that decision and why that's so important for the county taxpayers and the students in Fruitland?
Yeah, I mean, originally the 20 million is what we were really looking for this year, and then 20 million next year. Originally, that wasn't in the capital improvement program. That wasn't in the budget either. And the council insisted that it be put in the capital improvement program, and we insisted that it go into the budget. $20 million, originally members of the council wanted to take that completely out of reserves because they felt that the reserves were too high. The executive branch and finance director said, absolutely not. We're going to take $20 million we're going to bond it. And we thought, why would you want to bond it? Our reserves are very healthy, and this is in a period of time when the interest rates are higher than they've ever been probably in the last 40 years. So why in the world would you want to subject the taxpayers of Wicomico County to that type of a debt burden. So it went back and forth. It was a horse trading, I guess, and we came up with 10 and 10, and that's how it was resolved.
So there's a lot of folks who said that the county council is unwilling to compromise and work, but this is an example where you have.
Right.
Why do you think in the original budget, what did the executive's office even put the school funding in there?
It was really odd, Joe. They had 1.4 million from the year before. After some discussions, after the public hearing and the Board of Education talking to the executive, they put 4 million in for this year. But where's the other 44 that's needed for the next 2 years? State of Maryland doesn't see that. They're not gonna want to get into that funding. So in order to make it work, you have to demonstrate that you are committed on a long-term basis to fulfill the needs of the local jurisdiction. That means 20 million, nothing else. Plus, I had to ask, what sense is there in trying to do 1.4 last year, putting another 4 million in, and nothing else anywhere? It doesn't make sense. It's not like you're going to spend 4 million now and then delay it and spend 4 million for maybe architectural engineering or for whatever, and think that's going to be good 2 or 3 years down the road.
Well, and those plans, they expire after.
You're right.
So
if
you go to the work sessions, you can learn about how long these plans and these permits would even last.
Exactly.
There was a $1.4 million expense that was hanging out there if this school did not get funded at the time. Then that would just go away. We'd have to do it again, right?
Well, it would be wasted money, sure.
Yeah.
So and plus, when you delay, the costs go up exorbitantly. They go up every single year. You're going to be facing higher costs no matter what.
So why do you think that the executive's office used the funding model for this school as such a political maneuver? What advantage would there be to whether it forced you to bust the revenue cap, because you still had a 2-cent reduction in the property tax rate for the county, despite funding this school? Why would there be a need to use a school for political gain?
Well, I don't understand why it had never been put there. When I first went to the public hearing on the budget and saw that, because I'm on the school building commission, so I knew they were asking for 20 and 20. Plus, the capital improvement program they gave the county said we need 20 and 20. So when there wasn't anything there at all, I mean, there was spending for HVAC units on 3 different schools, and I thought, well, this is so out of whack with what we're trying to accomplish. And we never really got a good answer as to why it was completely abandoned. We just pushed as hard as we could and insisted that it's going to go in, one way or the other. We're going to insist that this goes into the budget.
Well, and as a private citizen in this county, a resident of this county, I can come to the county council meetings and express my desire to build the school, to not build the school, to delay building the school. But if the county executive's office has so much power, whether or not this gets put in, where does anybody get a voice to share their thoughts and feelings with that part of the current government system we have? Well,
that's true, and I see so much of that give and take. I've seen it over the last several years, where you have to ask yourself, where we've gotten into this arrangement with an executive legislative form of government in Wicomico County for about the last 18 years, and from my perspective, as sitting in a council seat for many of those years. I thought maybe it might be a good idea when it first was initiated. I was the first council president the first year we did this. But as the years have gone by, I've had to question. I think efficiency of governance and et cetera. I'm not convinced at all that this is the best form of government. I think you have a county council and a council form of government that could be just as efficient, possibly more efficient, at much less cost than trying to continue with the executive legislative form of government. It seems almost inherent that you have executives and councils that are going to have some conflict, but I'm really surprised as to how deep that division has gotten, not just in the last few years, but in prior years as well.
Well, and sometimes this has been characterized as a character attack on the current executive,
right.
But in fact, in the past with other executives, we've even had times where we couldn't even go to the bond market
right.
to fund. and that was done behind closed doors. Can you speak a little bit about that? It's not about the current executive.
Right. I get
This
it.
was
Yeah,
a couple
this is
executives ago.
Yeah.
But can you speak a little bit about that process, the person who was put in place without confirmations and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly correct. It was very unfortunate. The executive at the time, very similar to what we've experienced over the last year, the executive at that time put someone in place as the finance director. The council did not approve it. The council did not want that to happen. There were many reasons for that. But at the time, the executive refused to remove that person from that position. So technically, that person was actually receiving compensation from the taxpayers of Pocomoke County for a position that they were not authorized to be working in. All good and well for day-to-day in Pocomoke County, I guess. Even though it's not supposed to be that way. But what they found out, and I think when you really peel back the onion and realize just how off track everything was when we needed to go to the bond market. Usually we go every year, mostly for school and for major capital expenses. Well, I think they realized very clearly that if they had gone to New York and bonded, let's say $50 million, and this individual signed on the dotted line to authorize that as the finance director of Pocomoke County, knowing that legally that was not the finance director of Pocomoke County, right there you have fraud, and that's a huge liability to those individuals and the county as a whole. So it was just noted, we're not going to the bond market this year. It's just not going to happen.
You have seemed publicly and at meetings and in interviews I've watched of you to be a staunch supporter of following county charter, county code. Mm-hmm. The current executive has had two positions that they've put in place that weren't confirmed by the county council. Mm-hmm. Many, 3 dozen or over 30 that were.
Right.
There was a lot of consternation about these two.
Right.
Why is it so important that we follow those rules and that charter?
I think it's just the basic foundation of democracy. You follow the law. You do it whether it's a stop sign 10 miles out in the country when nobody's looking, and you do it when you're in government, especially when you're in government and the people expect you to abide by the laws that are put into place.
So there are charters and codes and deadlines that we've missed. We did miss the original deadline to negotiate the FOP contract.
That was a nightmare.
It was.
You
had many extra special sessions that you had to draw in from.
Yeah, we had to have many special sessions. For the collective bargaining agreement, the negotiations really should have started back in October of 23, but that didn't happen. There were delays. I know that the FOP was looking to begin that process. Didn't start until January. We didn't even get it. We had to demand it. We had to literally throw the gauntlet down and say, if we don't get it by this day, it's never going to get on the agenda, because we were that close to serious deadlines. We had already missed the original deadline as established by the Charter of Pocomoke County, which I believe was March 1st. Didn't come in until April. The exec says, "Well, we've been late, it's been late before, but that's you don't set precedent on bad behavior. You follow the law. Plus, that put us so far behind. It only gave us like a month, and possibly only two regular meetings, to sit there and go through this whole process. Not only that, but we didn't have any actuarials, not legitimate, bona fide actuarials to state that a 2.5% cost of living increase for the retirees was going to be sustainable for Pocomoke County in the long run. And we didn't have that. We had some facsimile of it, but it wasn't the real actuarial.
Well, again, at your open work sessions, these budgetary sessions, I witnessed the finance director, the current finance director, explain to the county council that she refuses to share that with you. Explain a little bit about how that position answers to the executive now, and how maybe someone in that position may be able to answer to the county council directly in the future if we return to a council manager form of government.
That's a very interesting dynamic. I mean, you really hit the nail on the head. I found out that with the executive and legislative form of government, I think that the power that's been given to the executive over departments, et cetera, I just don't. I think that's more of a detriment to the county than it is a benefit to the county. There are many instances where I think such as with, and now even with the law department right now, it's, Paul Wilbur works for the executive. So now we almost have to have our own attorney for our opinion, because he's only going to give us one if there's ever a challenge. But in reference to the finance director, I think all department heads feel as if they have a first allegiance to the executive because that is their boss, and a second allegiance to the council. Now, I'm not questioning any ethics or standards, any of that. I'm just saying that it's almost inherent that that's a concern. I think when you have a 7-member council, we are the boss collectively, 7 of us in an open session. And so when they do come before the council, I think there would be less pushback and maybe more, things would run much more cooperatively, much more sensible. The headbutting that we see now is, I think it's just, I don't think it's good for the county as a whole.
I wouldn't personally, as a resident, ask for that information to be public, because there's a lot of, you're negotiating a contract, you're dealing with folks' retirement. However, having that information in only one person's hands, who, whatever that person is, not the current one, could be the next one, could be one that was here before, but having all that information, that important information, in only one person's hands, under one person's control, would not lend itself to transparency if at the very least it was spread out over 7 people who are elected by the whole county.
And there's a lot that the council really can't say because a lot of it's done in closed session, so we can't really talk about that during the period of time. I know that while we were in the middle of this collective bargaining agreement and we questioned, well, is this financially sustainable? The next thing we know, across Facebook, across social media, press releases, we're being, demonized as anti-law enforcement. It's absolutely incredible. I mean, with my familiarity with the law enforcement industry, with Jeff Merritt's associations with law enforcement, with Shane Baker's, how the heck are you going to say that we're anti-law enforcement?
Exactly.
I got a lot of friends. That's what I said. I said, I got a lot of friends in law enforcement. We're not trying to beat you down. We're trying to make sure it's the best thing we can do for the deputies and for the citizens of Pocomoke County. But when you begin almost immediately to engage in this type of political back and forth, it's not good. I think when you have a basic 7-member of a council, you're all working, and you have to work in cooperation with each other. I never knew any council in Pocomoke County ever to be in a situation where they were yelling and screaming at each other, and things just weren't getting worked out at a table. Never.
Yeah, I've witnessed some of that with you all, with the executive, especially over the confirmations. There was some times where it was definitely hard to keep the decorum in the
It's
in the
very
room.
difficult, and we don't like it. We don't like it. I want to go into a meeting where everything's calm, predictable. Everybody's in a mood of cooperation and trying to get things done. We want to worry about airports, education, public safety, roads. I don't want to worry about a lawsuit as to whether or not somebody had given gone through the proper procedures or not. So, and if they don't, we are the checks and balances of Pocomoke County, and it's our responsibility to call that out if we see a problem.
And you're required. You're really required to do it.
Yeah, we're charged with that obligation.
So you're part of the 5-2 majority that did vote to add the referendum to the ballot on November. This, if we vote yes or vote to approve the Charter Amendment A, that would return this county, like 84% of other counties in this whole nation, to a council manager form of government. Why do you feel so strong that that's the way we should go?
Well, just based on history and how I've witnessed it over the last 18 years, I worry about the costs. It's been about $10 million over the last 18 years total. We have to ask, well, what do we have for it? What have we seen for it? I don't really say where we have seen anything substantially different. Nothing that a 7-member council couldn't and hasn't already done. You're looking at costs of about $800,000 a year and growing as each year goes by to sustain the executive branch. And again, I just am not convinced that that's a necessary element anymore. You see efficiency of operations. There are circumstances where I think when you have a body of government where you have one branch of government that acts so unilaterally, I think that's a problem. We had recycling stations that disappeared overnight with no public notice, no public input, no council notice whatsoever. I just get up one morning, I've got a lot of, because I use those ones, I've got a lot of recyclables and it's gone. Yeah. So that's not.
You were just one of the other residents who was looking for the recycling center.
Right, yeah. So we saw that. And we saw the same thing with the safari at the quarry, where just no input from the public was sought. No increase from the council. the council was circumvented. And what does it do? It just shows you, it's probably the most counterproductive thing you can do when you don't include the public in your decision-making processes.
I think one of the most interesting aspects, and growing up here my whole life, is before we had a county executive, we didn't, while we were still in a county manager form of government, we were able to get a community college, one of the best here. We have a nice baseball stadium. These are major public improvement projects. When you look at things, even like you were talking about the airport, we don't have a county executive, you still have a Tony Rudy, you still have a director of the airport who's going to go out there and fight for it.
And you have a 7-member council that has done this many times before. Just as you said, there's a 7-member county council that gave you Shorebridge Stadium, gave you Warwick Community College, it gave you Henry Parker Sports Complex, all of these things. So I don't see where you can say, well, the council's not going to be an effective form of government. There's some comments made about, well, executive best represents Wycomico County and Annapolis. Well, that's not really true either. When I went before COVID, I was in Annapolis every week. Prior to COVID, when it became Zoom meetings and things such as that, we would go every week during session, and meeting with all other members of the county of the other counties in Maryland, as well as being in the governor's office or meeting with the delegates. So it's not as if we're unfamiliar with that process.
Well, thank you for coming in and explaining a little bit more about the current politics in the government, in the county government, and as well as some of the future challenges coming up, including this ballot initiative.
Sure.
If you stick around with us, we'd like to give you 3 minutes, just like any citizen can in this county. Come to the county council.
Okay.
We'd like to give you 3 minutes at the podium to speak about anything you wish.
Okay, appreciate it.
All right, we'll be right back after this.
Whether you're a boater, fisherman, or a landlubber, Cedar Hill Park and Marina has something for everyone. Situated on the Nanticoke River near the town of Bivalve, just 15 miles west of Salisbury, Cedar Hill Park and Marina provides an abundance of water-based activities. The marina offers annual and seasonal boat slip rentals, as well as transient slips if you're just passing through while cruising the Chesapeake Bay. Not only will you see a variety of recreational motor and sailing vessels docked at the marina, but also traditional workboats that engage in crabbing during the summer and oyster dredging in winter. The marina facility is also improved with 2 concrete boat ramps, a soft launch for kayaks and canoes, public restrooms, hot showers, and a pump-out station for your marine sanitation device. The harbor basin is well protected by 2 long stone jetties, making it a safe port when those unexpected summertime pop-up thunderstorms occur, for which the Chesapeake Bay region is so famous. If you don't own a boat, there's also a small beach area for swimming. And if you're willing to take a walk out onto the stone jetties, you can do some crabbing or go fishing for striped bass, white perch, catfish, croakers, and sometimes red drum. But you don't have to be a water enthusiast to enjoy Cedar Hill Park. Land-based amenities include a pavilion for family gatherings, picnic areas with grills, children's playground, and a walking trail. If you enjoy active sports, you will also find softball and soccer fields, tennis courts, and a basketball court. And from atop a wooded hill overlooking the Nanticoke River, you can see clear across to Dorchester County and view some of the most spectacular sunsets the Eastern Shore has to offer. You don't want to miss visiting this fantastic multi-use park. For more information, visit the Wycomico County Recreation, Parks, and Tourism website.
Thank you for joining us again here at Open Agenda. Once again, I'd like to invite Council President Mr. John Cannon to take 3 minutes at the podium to speak about anything you wish.
Sure. Don't gavel me, please.
I will not.
Yeah. But first I'd like to say, Joe, thanks for having me. And I really appreciate you taking the initiative, because it's something to, as a citizen of the county, to talk about politics, but then to personally get involved in not only politics, but the community. I have to commend you for what you're doing here.
Well, thank you. There's a whole group of us, and we're very
that's
appreciate
excellent.
that.
The only thing I would say is that, we've been through a lot of turmoil in the last few years, and we know that there's this issue coming up on the ballot in November. I think I would ask the people to please think about it carefully, and consider it for what it is. I do have a confidence in how this county council does run governance, and I think that if you look at it, if you're really looking for, I think, a stable form of government where you don't have a lot of back and forth, a councilmatic form of government could go back to doing exactly what we were doing before, It would be reduced cost. I think there'd be more efficiency, and I think there certainly would be a lot more transparency with a 7-member group working at a table in the public on a regular basis.
Well, thanks again. Thanks for your time.
Sure.
We'd love to have you back out and hope you'll
Yeah.
join us again soon.
Sounds good.
Thanks for joining us today. That's all for this program. We'll see you next week. We think Mark Carroll is the best editor ever.